Alright, hey everyone! Welcome back to another Wuthering Waves video. Today we're diving into something huge happening in Wuthering Waves. Something that honestly might be one of the biggest gameplay shakeups we've ever seen. The negative status rework. And we're also going to talk about why CHISA, the upcoming Havoc Broadblade Resonator, might actually become the new core support for this entire system. So grab your snacks, drop a like, and let's talk about how the wool meta might actually change starting this version. Over the last few updates, Kuro has been slowly improving the themes in Wuthering Waves. But in version 2.8 and forward, they're taking things to the next level. We finally have a full redesign of how negative status stacks works, how many stacks enemy can hold, how each element get its own stacking mechanic, and how these mechanics interact with supports, DPS units, and new characters coming in the future. Before, negative status builds were okay. We only see Spectral Frazzle and Arrow Erosion as usable, the others missing in action. But now, each negative status has been reworked into something that actually affects endgame, synergy, and team building. Let's walk through each one. Then after that, let's talk about how CHISA will actually take advantage with this. Before this rework, negative status in the game was okay. Some are super good, some are useless. But now, every element finally gets its own identity, its own stacking system, its own gameplay loop, and the coolest part is that almost all of these effects scale with stacks. It's no longer apply dot weight do damage. Now some stacks actually explode, and some can freeze enemies, and some shred defenses, and many more. This rework doesn't just improve that damage, it changes the entire structure of how negative status works. It genuinely looks like Kuro is shifting the entire gameplay meta towards status-based damage on 3.0. Think about it. All 6 elements now have a dot compatible mechanic. Every one of them builds on a stacking system. Every one of them rewards ramping up stacks, and if you're paying attention, this is the kind of design that only works if a future support character is able to boost these stacks, extend those stacks, and empower those stacks. And that, people, that's where CHISA comes in. But before that, let's go and talk about the updated negative status one by one. Alright, let's talk about something that's going to matter a lot moving forward. The updated negative statuses. These are Havoc Bane, Fusion Burst, Glacier Chafe, and Electro Flare. And even if you're not the type to read in-game tooltips, these things are literally decide how much damage your team can pump out. So let's break them down in simple terms. First, Havoc Bane. This one's basically a defense shred that builds up with Havoc type attacks. Every stack you apply reduces the enemy defense a little more, up to 3 times by default. It's not flashy, it's not explosive, but it's quietly boosts your entire team's damage. Think of it as a free damage you don't have to work for. Then we have Fusion Burst, and this one is a little spicier. Fusion attack can stack this effect up to 10 times, and once you hit max stacks, boom! The stacks detonate into a burst of fusion damage. The higher the stacks, the bigger the explosion. So the characters with rapid, multi-hit fusion skill are going to get insane value of this mechanic. This status is basically build it up and watch the bomb go off. Now let's move over to Glacier Chafe, which is more of a hybrid between damage and crowd control. When Glacier attacks apply Chafe, the target takes extra Glacier damage the skill with stacks. But here's the fun part. Every stack can also slow the enemy, and if you hit the max stack, they get frozen, completely locked down, then almost all the stack reset. So Glacier teams now get a reliable freeze mechanic just by playing normally, and it's not just damage, it's tactical control. And finally, Electro Flare, which is the most complex out of the 4 but almost the most explosive. Each electro hit applies an instance of flare, stacking all the way up to 10. While these stacks are active, they deal periodic electro damage, and here's the kicker. Every stack also reduces the damage the enemy takes from Electro Rage. When you reach max stack, new hits start applying Electro Rage instead. Electro Rage is like temporarily amplifier that boosts the damage of the next Electro Flare trigger. Once that big amplified hit happens, Rage resets and you build it up again. So the whole mechanic becomes a cycle of stacking, detonating, stacking, detonating. So that means every few seconds, your Electro character get a massive mini burst. And that's why this status matters. They don't just add bonus damage, they create an actual playstyle. For example, fusion teams. Fusion teams want to build and burst. Glacial teams want to push towards the freeze windows. Havoc team get a passive defense shred value. And Electro teams get a rhythm of stacking and detonating damage spikes. Now let's talk about Chisa. Chisa's design, her element, the current meta direction, and the rework all point toward one possible role. Chisa being the ultimate negative status support. She's a Havoc Broadblade Resonator, which already gives some major hints. As we all know, Havoc units actually tend to be an extremely synergy heavy, and Broadblade units tend to act as an enabler, breaker, or heavy hitting bruiser that supports the team's damage flow. Combine these traits and you get a picture of someone who brings consistent debuff while maintaining team uptime. And when you insert Chisa into the brand new negative status ecosystem, she starts to look like the missing piece. The character that ties all the DOT or negative statuses together. Here's where the fun really starts. There's a lot of talk, again not confirmed, that Chisa's outro skill might increase the maximum stacks of negative status. This came from the TOA buff hints and also the echo skill hints. That might sound small on paper, but when you zoom out and see how everything stack up to 10 by default, suddenly increasing the max cap changes everything. Imagine the fusion burst stacks going from 10 stacks increases. That means the explosion is bigger, more frequent, and hits harder. Imagine Glacial Chief, stacks going from 10 stacks increases. That means enemy freeze faster but takes more damage before the freeze. Imagine Electro Flare and Electro Rage stacks going from 10 stacks increases. Electro Rage is already one of the strongest negative status that was reworked. So increasing the stack from that is actually super big. Chisa being Havoc means naturally works with Havoc Bane. The rework changed Havoc Bane into a stacking defense down effect. It goes up to 3 stacks normally, each one reducing a small percentage of defense. But when someone like Chisa potentially increases the stack limit and applies it consistently, she might become a universal damage amplifier. And the important thing about defense shred is that it affects all damage. Not just Havoc, not just Dot, not just her personal hit. It affects the entire team. Now let's talk about her Resonance Liberation. Her Resonance Liberation might deal AoE Havoc damage while healing the party. And that was super awesome. She becomes this hybrid support who does everything: sustain, debuff, buff, and DOT amplification. That's not a typical support. That's what I would call a core DOT enabler. And that, my friend, is the kind of character who doesn't get power creep easily, because their value comes from enabling the entire categories of characters. And if she's both a healer and defense shredder while boosting that stacks, there is literally no downside. Well, that's assuming if 3.0 is actually going with the dot meta. So how this might change the entire meta? So this is where the future suddenly looks very different. For the longest time, WoWa has been a game about raw DPS. You press skill, you slam attacks, you burst things down, but now we're entering a future where dot or negative statuses carries. So negative statuses teams gain scaling, crowd control, explosion mechanics, uptime, and consistency. The rework makes every stack matters, and Chisa becomes the catalyst that pushes them beyond their old limits. If this prediction comes true, dot or negative status teams won't just be a viable meta. They will be meta, and Chisa won't just be a good unit, she'll be a foundation that holds this new damage ecosystem together. For me, this character is actually made for 3.0 meta. You can pair her with Zani and Kartitia, but the increase of damage is actually minimal. Well, after that, should you pull Chisa? Based on the pure theory, if her kit really matches what I'm talking about, she could become one of the best long-term investment in the game. You can slot her with every dot team. She helps every negative status type. She may boost stack caps, which affects every character released now or in the future, and if also brings healing on top of all that, that's the holy grail of support. I think the only downside of her kit is that if you don't like that team or that combat mechanics, and the only downside is that you are relying on 3.0. If Wuthering Waves actually releases a lot of DPS for that teams, she will become super good. Otherwise, she's stuck on that teams. I might be wrong though, but at the end of the day, the best part is that we get to watch it unfold together. So let me know in the comments, are you pulling for CHISA and which dot type are you most excited to try in the new rework? Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.